The rain tapped softly against the window of the small apartment where Daniel sat, staring at a pile of unopened bills. His hands rested heavily on the table, rough and worn from long shifts at a job that seemed to take everything from him, yet gave so little in return. For years, Daniel had done what everyone told him to do. Work hard, save what you can, and maybe, if you're lucky, you'll get ahead someday. But no matter how many hours he worked or how much he sacrificed, he always ended up back in the same place. Tired, broke, and wondering what he was doing wrong. What Daniel didn't know, then, is that his story is not unusual. It's the story of millions. Most people never learn how money really works. They're taught how to earn just enough to survive, but never how to build wealth. They're given rules about saving pennies while the world quietly takes away dollars. And the truth is, this silent trap is why so many fail at money year after year, generation after generation. But here's the part no one tells you. Failure with money isn't about laziness or bad luck or not wanting it badly enough. It's about missing the hidden rules, the ones schools never teach and society never explains. And once you understand these rules, everything changes. In today's story, we'll follow Daniel's journey, his struggles, his failures, his turning points, and the hard-earned lessons that transformed him from being stuck in the cycle of financial failure to finally breaking free. Along the way, you'll see why most people fail at making money, and more importantly, how you can avoid the very mistakes that keep so many trapped. Before we dive in, I want you to do something powerful for yourself. Subscribe to this channel right now and turn on notifications, because every story we tell here is designed to give you not just information, but transformation. And if you've ever felt like money was slipping through your fingers no matter how hard you tried, then this journey is for you. Stay with me until the very end, because the lessons you'll uncover here may just change the way you see money forever. Daniel's mornings were a blur of exhaustion and repetition. He woke before sunrise, coffee in hand, and stared at the same cramped cubicle he had for years. The fluorescent lights buzzed faintly overhead, a constant reminder that he was somewhere between surviving and merely existing. Each paycheck he received disappeared almost as quickly as it arrived. Rent, utilities, groceries, a single late payment on the credit card he couldn't quite pay off in full. It was a cycle that drained more than his bank account. It drained his spirit. He wasn't reckless. He wasn't irresponsible. He had read books, watched videos, even tried budgeting apps. Yet, somehow, he always ended the month wondering where it all went wrong. His debt grew quietly in the background while bills piled up, and the small savings he tried to build seemed to vanish before they could take root. Daniel's friends told him he needed to work harder, but he was already working every hour he could. Family members advised him to be patient, but patience alone never paid the bills. With every failed attempt to get ahead, the weight of frustration pressed heavier, and a quiet fear settled in. What if no matter what he did, he'd never break free? It was during these long nights, staring at spreadsheets and trying to make sense of numbers that never seemed to add up, that Daniel began to understand a painful truth. Most people fail at making money not because they're lazy or unlucky, but because they're missing the knowledge, strategies, and mindset that actually make money work for them. And this is where his story begins to change. He was about to discover the hidden principles of wealth building, lessons that aren't taught in schools, lessons that aren't obvious to the average worker, lessons that, once understood, would allow him to take control of his money, stop the endless cycle of struggle, and finally begin building the life he had always dreamed of. One evening, Daniel's routine changed in a subtle but powerful way. He had stayed late at work again, the office empty except for the faint hum of the security system and the soft ticking of a wall clock. On a whim, he opened a financial forum he had bookmarked months ago, but never explored seriously. Scrolling through pages of conversations, he noticed stories of ordinary people, teachers, clerks, young professionals, who had transformed their finances using simple, repeatable strategies. There were no magic formulas, no get-rich-quick schemes, just disciplined approaches applied consistently that created results over time. A single post caught his eye, A young man had started with just $500 and within 3 years had built a side income that replaced his full-time salary. He detailed the exact steps he took, budgeting in a way that forced savings, investing smartly in stocks and assets, and most importantly, changing the way he thought about money. Daniel leaned closer, heart pounding. This wasn't hype. This was real. This was actionable. He realized he had been approaching money all wrong, chasing short-term solutions instead of building sustainable systems. For the first time, Daniel felt a spark of hope, the kind that made his chest tighten with possibility. If someone else could do it, why couldn't he? What if the cycle of bills, debt, and frustration wasn't permanent? What if he could take control, starting with just small, consistent changes? That night, he made a decision. He would commit fully, not just to reading, not just to learning, but to implementing what he discovered. He would track every dollar, understand every investment option, and apply the strategies others had successfully used. He was no longer willing to accept that his financial struggles were inevitable. As he closed his laptop and sat back in the dim glow of his desk lamp, Daniel felt a mixture of fear and excitement. The journey ahead would not be easy. There would be mistakes, setbacks, and moments of doubt. But he knew this. For the first time in his life, he was taking real action toward financial freedom. And little did he know, this single turning point would set in motion a journey that could transform not just his bank account, but his entire life. The next morning, Daniel woke with a clarity he hadn't felt in years. He opened his laptop and pulled out a notebook, determined to map out a plan. Every dollar he earned, every expense, every opportunity to save or invest would be tracked with precision. He started small. A few extra hours freelancing, cutting back on needless subscriptions, cooking meals instead of eating out. Each small adjustment felt tedious, almost mundane, but Daniel reminded himself, consistency builds momentum. Within weeks, the first results began to appear. A modest savings account balance that had previously seemed impossible now showed a positive number. Daniel felt a thrill that made his chest tighten every time he logged in. The numbers weren't huge, but they represented control, a sense he hadn't felt since he'd graduated college. Daniel didn't stop there. He began educating himself on investing. He read articles, watched tutorials, and joined online communities of like-minded people. He opened a brokerage account with a small amount he had saved and started his first investments. Every purchase, every trade was made carefully, with the lessons he'd learned guiding him. Of course, it wasn't perfect. There were days when the market dipped, when he questioned if he was making the right moves. But instead of panicking, Daniel reminded himself, this was a marathon, not a sprint. Losses were part of learning, and learning was part growth. Over time, small wins compounded, dividends reinvested, side hustles expanded, and his mindset shifted from scarcity to abundance. The more Daniel applied what he had learned, the more possibilities he saw. He realized that money wasn't just numbers, it was a tool that, when wielded wisely, could create freedom, security, and opportunity. Evenings that once felt heavy with worry now felt charged with purpose. Daniel wasn't just surviving anymore, he was building. And with each deliberate step, he edged closer to a life where financial stress would no longer dictate his choices. By the end of this climb, Daniel was no longer the same man who had sat staring at bills and charts weeks before. He was confident, informed, and empowered, a man who had learned that financial freedom begins with the first deliberate action. Just when Daniel began to feel a sense of momentum, life reminded him that the path to financial freedom was never smooth. One morning, he logged into his investment account only to find that a small series of trades he had made had taken a sudden downturn. The market had shifted overnight, erasing weeks of careful gains in a matter of hours. He stared at the numbers, chest tightening, mind racing. Am I doing this right? He whispered to himself. Anxiety crept in like a shadow, reminding him of all the sleepless nights he had endured, the sacrifices he had made, and the uncertainty he still faced. On top of this, an unexpected car repair bill arrived, followed by an overdue utility notice. His carefully crafted budget now felt fragile, like a house of cards teetering in the wind. Doubts began to gnaw at him. Was he chasing an illusion? Was financial freedom truly attainable, or just a dream for the lucky few? Daniel's friends offered advice, some practical, some cynical. "Maybe you're too young to worry about investing so aggressively," one said. "Just enjoy life," another joked. But Daniel knew that small comforts could no longer mask the pressure he felt. He had committed himself to change, and retreating now wasn't an option. He spent nights rereading his notes, analyzing where he went wrong, questioning every decision. Each setback felt personal, a challenge to his resolve. Yet, amidst the frustration, a small voice inside reminded him of the first time he had dared to take control of his money. The first $1,000. That first step had been small, uncertain, and yet transformative. Drawing on that memory, Daniel resolved to face the setbacks head-on. He adjusted his strategies, diversified his investments, tightened his budget, and reminded himself that mistakes weren't failures, they were lessons. Each loss became a teacher, each doubt a test of his discipline. By confronting these challenges directly, Daniel began to build resilience. The climb was no longer about speed or instant success. It was about endurance, patience, and unwavering commitment. And slowly, painfully, the fog of doubt began to lift, replaced with a quiet, determined confidence. He realized something profound. Setbacks were not the enemy. They were the proving ground. Those who persisted, adapted, and learned would not just survive the journey. They would thrive. The morning sun filtered through the blinds, casting warm streaks across Daniel's small apartment. For the first time in months, he felt a sense of clarity. The market fluctuations no longer intimidated him. They had become part of the rhythm of his journey, a dance of risk and reward he had learned to navigate. He leaned back in his chair, staring at the portfolio on his laptop. The numbers were no longer just figures. They were proof of his persistence, discipline, and growth. The $1,000 he had started with now represented not just capital, but a lifetime of lessons etched into every trade, every decision, every late night of analysis. Daniel reflected on the countless nights he had worried, the friends who doubted him, and the fears that had gnawed at his confidence. Every setback, every misstep had carved a deeper understanding of how money truly works. He realized that wealth was not a magic trick or luck. It was knowledge, strategy, patience, and a relentless commitment to improvement. He picked up a notebook, flipping to the first page where he had written his initial goals. The same small handwriting that had once sketched out dreams of financial freedom now looked like the blueprint for a life transformed. Daniel smiled, feeling the weight of both gratitude and accomplishment. But more importantly, he understood the lessons were not only for him, they were for anyone willing to learn. Wealth was accessible, even from modest beginnings, if approached with intentionality and courage. Every dollar invested thoughtfully, every decision made with awareness, could compound not just into money, but into confidence, independence, and opportunity. Daniel closed his laptop, feeling a quiet sense of victory. He had not only achieved financial growth, he had mastered the mindset needed to sustain it. He knew there would be more challenges ahead, more markets to navigate, and more opportunities to seize. But now, he faced them not with fear, but with strategy, experience, and unwavering determination. Leaning back, he whispered to himself, "This is just the beginning." And to anyone watching, he wanted them to know this too. The first step is always yours to take. Start small, stay disciplined, and trust the process. Your journey to financial freedom begins the moment you decide it does. Now it's your turn. Whether you have $10 or $1,000, the principles are the same. Take control of your financial future, start learning, and begin your journey today. Don't wait for the perfect moment. The time to act is now. Subscribe, share this story, and commit to your path toward wealth. Your first step could change everything.